Welcome back to blastaway.eu, and this week's video is about the M4 setup using a Retaliator, and I have two of those, one using 3D printed and aftermarket parts, and the other one is just using homemade parts, or basically also utilizing stuff from the hardware store. So let's start right out with the version using 3D printed parts. And right here, let's start from the front. We have the muzzle attachment, which is basically 3D printed and just sticks onto the tip of the muzzle. And then we have the typical M4 iron sight. Down here, very prominent is the pump grip, which is really cool for gameplay. Then this one is actually the iron sight from the Star Wars blaster, and in the back we have the worker stock, which is painted blue and has this mesh inside, which I have made for my MM Blaster. I personally don't really have that much experience with 3D printed products, so I can't really tell or like have a comparison in terms of like quality or like print quality. But that being said, I really like how it looks and feels, and the best part about like 3D printed parts is that it's more solid than what you can usually make on your own. The pump grid itself is very nice and comfortable, and definitely better than the stock form, like when you have your hand here and prime the blaster from the top. So this one is way more comfortable and is definitely better for actual gameplay. Switching over to the basically homemade version, and here I have used a piece of PVC and cut out like this little bit to make it look cooler. And the iron sight here, I use basically the tubing of the original Retaliator stock. The iron sight is made out of the recon sight and using a PVC clamp as the actual iron sight. In the back, that's basically a radar stock, and I used two pieces of styrene and cut those shapes to give it the typical look of the M4 stock. Basically, this is just a stock Retaliator having like some extra attachments which make it look like the M4. And the operation is also the same like the usual Retaliator, which means the priming happens here like from the top, which is basically the only downside compared to the one using 3D printed parts, because in terms of looks I actually prefer this one. Another disadvantage you have with this barrel attachment is that like these parts are basically just glued on, and I don't know, using maybe also some epoxy putty, I don't really remember, but this part is not as solid as if it was 3D printed, which means if you drop the gun, this iron sight might break off, or like even this little barrel here. And the same of course goes for the iron sight and also like these plates for the stock. So when we look back at the 3D printed one, of course there are like way more details, but the main advantage over the homemade one is basically that this is really solid and it won't break even if you drop it. The pump grip itself is definitely way better and more like convenient if you play, because the rate of fire might be a little bit higher, and especially if you have like an upgraded spring like in this one, the pump grip is definitely more fun to use than the top priming action. All these parts can be purchased from GavinFuzzyCustoms from Singapore, and I will put the link in the description box below so you can get your own. He also offers other like types of like muzzle tips or attachments, and basically everything that's here in orange you can order in different colors like green, black, or whatever you like. This little plate here not only fills the gap that you get when you don't have like the priming slide to cover it, but this one also says blast away, which is a really nice touch. So for this version I also cut down the priming slide and glued it on top to preserve the tag rail. So basically the attachments on here won't move around, which they usually do when you have like other homemade pump grip modifications. So is it worth it to buy 3D printed parts? Because in fact, of course, like this whole setup actually doubles the price of the actual blaster if it actually is enough. And well, the answer is it really depends on your preferences and of course on your budget. I personally think that the operation is way better with this one, with the pump grip, but in terms of looks, I might prefer this one. But in the end, of course, tastes do differ, so it's really up to you which one you like and if you want to spend the money. I personally think it's really worth it, and all in all, it looks really nice nonetheless. So tell me what you think and which one you would prefer to have. Of course, this one is definitely cheaper, but you don't really have to spend time on this one in making it, so it's just about installing everything, which is basically really done in 10 minutes, while this one of course might take you a little bit longer, especially because you also have to paint those little parts. So that's it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I see you next time.